Welcome, my dear Earthlings. How have you been? How was your week? Hope all is good. Hope all is well. I missed you, and I'm so happy you're here again. So, here we are, episode number 9. I had the pleasure and the honor to have the first human guest landed on Planet Joe. Such a great pod it was. We actually recorded close to 5 hours. So what I did, I cut it into 2 episodes. So this will be the first part of our pod. And I hope you enjoy it. So this is the first part. Next week, come back and listen to the second half of this wonderful and interesting pod. Anyways, welcome, love ya, missed ya, and enjoy the pod with Adam Cartier.
You are about to launch to Planet Joe. Please enter the pod and fasten the brain safety belt. This planet is intended for mature humans only. If you are the sapient type that gets offended easily, please exit the pod immediately. Enjoy your visit on Planet Joe Pod. Launching now.
All right, we got Adam Cartier in the PJP studio.
Shalom,
Adam,
shalom.
What's up?
Doing very well. Very happy to be here.
Nice. First human on Planet Joe.
Yes. Wow, the first
you're
in-person human.
Yeah, what's his name? Armstrong?
One small step for man.
Landed on Planet Joe.
Yes, there's hundreds of listeners who wish that they were in my position right now.
So, yeah, here we are. Here we is.
Here we isn't. Well,
here we isn't.
We definitely are, but yeah, we got
the lube going.
Yes, sir. We got that clinking.
Mm-hmm. The social lubrication. All right, so let's start. Like, the 2.5 listeners don't know who Adam Cartier is.
I'm one of those 2.
See, guys, this is the part where Adam would listen to it and then would give me shit. He's like, why are you so hard on yourself?
I wonder what my feedback on myself is going to be. Like, I'm going to be fucking rip myself to shreds when I listen to myself. I'm like, oh, Adam, what the hell was that?
See, you just made me think about it. I'm so glad that you're actually doing it, because now you'll be like, okay, I understand why he does it that way. Yeah, just, why he fucks up so bad.
Some humble pie.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, tell us, who's Adam Cartier?
Who is Adam Cartier? Yeah. Well, I'm originally from London, the eldest of 4 children.
Wait, were you born in London?
I was indeed. Okay. Snowy night on the 13th of February, 91.
Okay.
And I won't bore you with the rest of the details, because I came to Israel when I was more or less 20. For my university experience.
So before 20, you were never in Israel before?
Not exactly. My mum is Israeli. So her parents are in Haifa. My grandparents are in Haifa. So I've essentially been coming here my whole life, but I would definitely say that living here is far different than coming here on holiday. That's for sure. Day-to-day grind here. Well, I think even the best of us, I don't think anyone can really survive here.
That's what I was talking about. What was it, episode 3 or 4?
Yeah, exactly.
How it sucks living here, but when you come to visit here, it's cool.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, is this a meaningful challenge, or am I just like masochistic and like enjoying the suffering in some weird sense?
I go for masochist.
Yeah? Like you just love the suffering and complaining about the suffering, but...
No, not me. I'm saying that you are probably a masochist because you're staying here on your own will for so long.
Yeah, maybe you're sadistic. You enjoy my suffering, but I like I definitely think that there's definitely an element of it being exciting here. I think lifestyle compared to London is more spontaneous, and people live in the moment. Maybe they think because, who knows, maybe they'll get bombed tomorrow. But like, yeah, it's
spontaneous in what way? Because you remember when I researched the whole, was it on the sex episode or the YouTube episode? I can't remember. When I think it was the YouTube episode about the sexuality and which nation is the most promiscuous one. In England, London was, I think, number 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So I don't think, are you comparing that aspect of being spontaneous or everything else but sexuality?
So that's a good point. I think maybe more openly spontaneous. I think that everyone in London pretends like they plan everything 1 week in advance and then make mistakes, whereas people were here kind of consciously making mistakes. But I was thinking more like on a Saturday morning, popping to the beach and not planning it before.
Yeah. That's
and
true.
Maybe in London, everything's more kind of premeditated, going to the theatre. Well, I'm kind of overdoing it a bit. But yeah, the cinema, like things are kind of planned.
Yeah.
But I definitely would agree that in London, there is some promiscuity, I would say. I would not... I wouldn't say that Tel Aviv's any more or less promiscuous than London, but I would say that there is this kind of sporadic way of life here, which people really live in the moment. And, you find it elsewhere, but...
No, but it's true. I think Israelis are known to be spontaneous, not even on a day-to-day basis, like even vacations or whatever. It could be planned in like a week, like we're going to France for a week. Yeah,
right. I mean, when you're in survival mode, I think you got a situation where you don't really have a choice but to live in the moment. I mean, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth, living in Tel Aviv, your paycheck is your rent.
Yeah.
Then what are you going to do? You got to just enjoy the moments that you got where you're not thinking about, I don't know.
Plus the nightlife in Tel Aviv, I got to say, it's phenomenal.
That's true. I actually think incomparable. And I've been around. I've been out in, I did a semester abroad in Portugal. I've been out in Marrakesh in Morocco, New York. I was more recently. Like I'm fairly well traveled, and Tel Aviv is really special.
It is
from that point of view.
Yeah, not that I experienced the nightlife here in many years, but when I was younger, I remember like it was much better than LA.
Well, I think you're being a little bit modest, Joe. You had a bar here called Planet Joe.
That's true.
You're the namesake of this podcast. I think you can elaborate on the nightlife a bit more than that.
No, even before the nightclub, I just remember nightlife was, I don't know, maybe it was because of my DJing experience and all that. But actually, I was a DJ in LA too for many years. And still, I think, Tel Aviv, I don't know if better is the right word, but different. But I had a blast. I always said Tel Aviv nightlife rocks. But
yeah, it's unique. I think that if there's no other city in the world that you will hop from bar to bar more than you do here.
By foot.
Yeah, right. Like it's literally you are a headless chicken and everyone's trying to find the best party and it doesn't actually exist. But everyone like will kind of have this threshold where
that's universal though.
Yeah.
Chasing the right party that doesn't exist.
Exactly. I feel like it's kind of
everywhere.
A microcosm for people's lives. Yeah. But like I think it's like
you just reminded me, have you ever seen the movie Swingers?
No.
It's like early 90s.
Okay.
About the nightlife of LA nightlife of a group of friends. But the greatest scene that I loved, it was almost like a documentary of them like trying to find the greatest party at night. Okay. And it's like a convoy of 10 cars and they just travel like from one place to another looking for parking spots. I don't know, it just reminded me.
I mean, I know this is Instagram cliche, but it's about the journey, not the destination thing.
Right,
so in the pursuit of the best party, you end up having the best party along the way. And I think that's usually what happens. But yeah, me and a good friend of mine are pretty much most of our nights end up kind of like just wandering around aimlessly and just at the end of the night being like, that was either the best or like the worst night of our lives. Right. But that ambiguity is just pretty much what it's like living here.
Yeah.
You're just always unsure of what the hell's going on. It's just a mystery living here. And even why people live here, I think it's a mystery to them. But they're just like, there's something about living here
I think most people just don't have a choice. I'm experiencing it right now. I think the lubrication is starting to make my tongue slide. Experiencing.
So one of my favorite movies, I don't even know if it's right to say it's a movie, but it is a movie, but it's so different from what you see nowadays. It's called My Dinner with Andre. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
So My Dinner with Andre is essentially this guy who is this kind of New York writer and has this kind of more, let's say, structured reality, whereas his friend, who is this director, just went off the rails. And the whole conversation is about kind of what reality is, and it really is kind of fascinating, and the dialogue is amazing. And there's this line where the guy who is the more kind of open-minded, kind of free spirit type, talks about New York. And he says that that modern cities are the modern day prison and the modern day concentration camp, I think is what he was saying.
Interesting.
And the nuance there was that, like, what happens is you build this prison around yourself, but you kind of simultaneously think that the city, you're proud of it because you built it, but it's your own prison. And you always, like, you talk to people and they always say, I always want to leave. Like, I want to leave New York.
Yeah.
Like, I'm desperate. And then for 30 years they say, I want to leave, and they can't.
Right.
Because they're proud of it. Because they feel like they're part of it.
Yeah.
And this, like, that conflict is like that people get trapped kind of in their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And like that movie is so profound. I second half of the movie more than the first half, I'd say, but like anyone who's not heard that movie, not heard of that movie.
The title rings a bell, but it's pretty old, isn't it?
It's on YouTube. Yeah. Totally. I think it's in the 80s or something, but it's that whole kind of like, do you need to go to a Buddhist retreat in the Himalayas to experience reality? Like, do you have to like take psychedelics and kind of, go to the middle of a forest to experience true reality? Or if you go to a cigar shop in New York, that's also reality? I mean, maybe that's a human reality,
Yeah.
So, yes.
I just realized I wanted to take a picture for
the gram. Yeah, we got to selfie it up. Like,
all right, guys, you get to hear the picture that you're going to see on Instagram with me and Adam.
Experiencing.
So let's go back to you. So when did you actually move to Israel?
Sorry, guys, I'm sticking my tongue out.
The hell?
Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah, with social media done.
Yeah.
Okay, tick that box. I just got to make a side note, which is that like there was this guy who literally, I've forgotten his name now, but like basically spoke about social media and how like the experiencing self and the remembering self are so different. And like basically this whole phenomenon of like thinking fast and slow and how our experiencing and remembering selves are different, and like how you see girls, for example, I mean boys too, but like in a bar looking miserable.
Right.
But they will literally just light up the moment that the social media comes on because they realize they're kind of aware of their remembering self. So even if their experiencing self is miserable, they know that they can remember the night as a good night.
Right.
Because the next day they can check their social
exactly,
media. Like, oh my God, what a fun night that was.
Right.
And you're like on the side being like you like try to talk to them, they'll like shut you up. You're like, you're having the worst night. Like, why?
It wasn't the greatest night.
Yeah, like why are you kind of putting cold to me?
Right.
Like, I'm just trying to improve your night. But anyway, okay. So I mean, a detail I skipped over earlier was that as well as coming here on holiday, I came here for a 9-month gap year program when I was 18.
A what program?
A gap year program, like volunteering and learning
kibbutz
Hebrew.
and all that.
Not exactly, but in its concept, it's like kind of very volunteering based. So I did a different 1-month program, which was a kibbutz thing. But like my mum was born on kibbutz also, which is kind of a side detail. But so that I think was what like first planted the seed that like I could live here, and I really liked the experience of being here.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to go to the army. A friend of mine who wanted to go to paratroopers like you were, and I was training for it, but long story short, I basically hurt my knee.
Oh,
so I'd retracted my university application, and I told them, I was like, oh, like I originally retracted it because of the army, but like that didn't work out because of my knee. Like, can I come back? They're like, no, sorry, we replaced your place.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to apply till next year. So like, you know what? If I can't go to the army in Israel, I'll study.
Yeah.
Came to IDC, like a university in Herzliya, just north of Tel Aviv, and studied something I wasn't particularly passionate about. And business.
What was that?
That's business. Yeah. Like, but you know, they didn't have any science programs. That was like, my Hebrew wasn't good enough at the time to take a degree in English, in Hebrew, sorry. And while I was in university, I was like, you know what? I want to stay here. I don't think I can stay here long term without going to the army. So I officially immigrated to the country. And
your mom was here at the time? She lived here?
No. Essentially, the whole time that I've been here, which is more or less the past 10 years, my immediate family have always been in London. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've I've been, I don't know, the one, I feel like vicariously I am kind of fulfilling what my mom has been talking about since I was born, which is coming back to Israel.
Yeah.
So like, I kind of like, you know, she's kind of like, you know, she talks the talk and then I walk the walk kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was brought up in an Israeli home, so I don't think that living here is as much of a culture shock for me as it maybe is for some of my international friends who haven't really come from Israeli households. My dad's English, but I would say still that it was a pretty Israeli upbringing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm actually very happy to be here.
So you did end up in the army, though, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So after university, I was part of a project at Google, not as a Googler, but like as a contractor. And I was like quite settled there. I wouldn't say like overly settled. Like I was kind of in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to the army, and it just took a long time for me to go through the process, like everything bureaucratic here in Israel.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to the Air Force for a year, and I finished that in the end of 2017. So essentially, the first thing I've done since leaving the army is teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. Like high tech might be on the horizon.
On the horizon.
Maybe a combination of the two,
Yeah.
teaching and high tech. I feel like there's education.
It's a good combo. And then you're planning on going to China. Is it something that, can we talk about it? Or?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I figure, you know, go big or go home, right? In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
So after coming up to a year now of teaching in Tel Aviv with my coworker who's sitting next to me here, I basically I'm working for the same company, but it's not really connected because it's a franchise. So there's no real Wall Street Israel, Wall Street China kind of do their own things. And I will be starting in Wall Street Shanghai on the 2nd of December.
That's fucking exciting, man. I'm so proud of you for doing it.
You know, it's funny because on Friday I was with my aunt and uncle for my cousin's birthday, and they are going to California for 2 weeks in a couple of weeks from now.
Okay.
And she's like, oh, like, I can't believe you get to travel. Like, I was like, you're going to California. She's like, no, but it's not the same.
Right.
And what you
compare 2 weeks to 1 year.
Well, it wasn't just about the length of time. She was like that feeling of like just kind of leaving everything, going by yourself, and just kind of integrating with new people, new culture, new experiences, new places.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with her. But like, you know, these guys have traveled a lot, but there is something really exciting about that kind of where you do something externally, which you know is going to be like an internal journey.
Right.
Like, you know, you're going to find yourself, find more about yourself.
Yeah. But that has to do with length of time, I think.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, you can't really.
You know, I wish I'm so wrong about this probably, but I'd love to be in a situation where in 10 years from now, no matter what my family circumstances are, I will just be able to be like, guys, fam, we're going to go to Brazil for a year. And they were like, yay. I mean, I used to live next to neighbors who were just the biggest world travelers. Every 2 years, this whole family, I think 3 children and the parents would just go to a new country. And I guess the guys, like the mum and the dad's work accommodated that. Like it was something that they could kind of, you know, portable, like there's something, a work that they could travel with them. I can't remember what it was. I guess something internet related.
And travel for a while, or like?
Yeah, no, literally live in a new country for like 2 years.
That's the way
like,
to do it.
They were Australian,
Nice.
and they were like, 2 years in America, 2 years in England,
Nice.
2 years in Portugal. I don't know, like they were.
That's
just,
awesome.
Yeah. Although, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, maybe for the kids with tons of friends and everything, maybe that's tough.
It's hard, but the other side of the coin, many people say it expands the horizon of growing up and while traveling.
I wonder whether you feel a bit homeless. I wonder whether you get to a point where even though you've really opened your mind to all these new ways of life, it's like, what is my permanent home? Like, where do I belong?
Yeah, that's true. I've heard, not that I've heard many, but I've heard people that grew up with, if it was in America, military father, and they had to move every once in a while. Now that I think of it, they all complained and said it sucked.
The grass is always greener, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I do think that on the balance of things, I would rather live in a permanent place than to move around a lot.
Yeah.
But, I definitely... there's something, I'm jealous of people when I hear that they're like, I grew up in Hong Kong and my dad worked for the embassy. And then we were like, 6 years we lived in like Latvia.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's so cool. They're like, oh no, it sucked. Cause I just kept moving around so much, but
maybe when you're young as a child, maybe it's probably difficult because until you connect with people and then you have to pack up and go. But I think if you're like over 21, 25, then it's probably all positive living in different places. I told you about my RV dream, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same thing, but it's so, to me, it's so attractive to be like a nomad.
I totally get that. I think that this world of podcasting is something which, you got some equipment with you, but not too much.
Yeah.
Like this idea that you just got to bring your brain around with you.
Right.
And, wherever you go, your brain comes with.
Yeah.
And I think it's so exciting for people who are more kind of nomadic.
Right.
That like there are so many jobs now that you can just take with you, and especially when it's like kind of you're sharing your experiences. So in a weird sense, the more experiences you have, the better.
Right.
The more content you
Exactly.
have to share and to discuss.
Exactly.
And through the mind of Joseph Peterson,
which would be talking about different swinger clubs in different states, and nudist parks, interview people in that community.
That thing about living vicariously through you. I mean, maybe you'll kind of secretly, you'll have some listeners who are like, maybe I can't do this myself.
Right.
At least I've got someone
That
out
sounds
there.
like a fun adventure to listen to.
Yeah. You're doing it on everyone's behalf. You're making a sacrifice for the cause.
Right.
Like, you don't want to go to these clubs. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. You're just.
It's delicious. You won't like it.
Yeah, exactly. You're just, La Vida Loca is just so chaotic, right? I mean, you just don't.
That's what I really want to do. But in reality, and I talked about it in my podcast and the YouTube thingy. When it comes to sexuality, people tend to take a few steps back. When it comes to succeeding, when I think about it, like, compared to other podcasts, if it's advertisement or whatever, sexuality, you're doomed. Like, I see it with, sex educators and YouTube channels. They get demonetized. And so that's the dilemma, keep it PG just for the sake of, succeeding financially, or just doing what you really love and bite the bullet.
Yeah, I think it's that long-term thing where you want to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say that you love what you do.
Right.
And that you... and I think that, before kind of talk about that meaningful challenge, I mean, when you've got things in society that might be taboo or stigmatized and not justifiably, it's like you kind of almost have a responsibility in a weird sense. That's
what it feels like, honestly.
Because if you know, that there's kind of something you need to reveal, and that burden where you feel kind of obliged to kind of want to help society in a sense, and you know that having an open approach to sexuality, for example, is something that's just a win-win situation for everyone involved, then yeah, like fighting against that stream of culture because you know that you're making a change for the better is, you know, I feel like that's what can be more meaningful than that.
Right. And that's what's so attractive about it. It's like, I think if it was like mainstream, I guess like just talking about movies, then maybe it wouldn't have been so appealing.
Yeah.
But like you said, that's what's attractive. It's like maybe being a pioneer. It's not just me. I don't want to take credit for it, but there's thousands of sex educators and there are conventions about, I don't know if you heard. Yeah, of course you heard the other, what was the last podcast that I played? Adam Savage at one of the conventions. So the message is the same. And I just love hearing people who have the same, you know, I wanted to say message, but they're also the messenger. So there's something appealing in being, you know, a messenger of that message of sexuality, and but it kind of hurts, but that's the reality of it when it comes to, you know, if you want to succeed in it and make a living from it, the reality is that it's close to impossible, you know. But
I think it's one of those things where, you know, when you're dealing with a situation which is just a lack of awareness, and you're just dealing with essentially, I don't overstate this, but darkness. Like, it's not like a case where like people necessarily are opposed to something. They're just kind of ignorant of it. They've just never heard someone address it. And, you know, the only thing that can kind of overcome darkness is lightness, right? Darkness can't shine a light on darkness. So all I feel like the situation with sexuality is you're just kind of illuminating the corners of the room that have been left dark. And okay, I'm not going to pretend like there's not kind of going to be a more kind of like, let's say, conservative response, because it's uncomfortable subject. I mean, these are things which are not, especially when it comes to upbringing, like these are things that people try to stay away from. And
that's what I want to change in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
Uncomfortableness.
Yeah. And if if you think about the way that people approach, I don't know, let's say homosexuality, and if people had just kind of like shut their mouths and not kind of dealt with the fact that it's just a biological reality and a societal reality, and that like people are literally causing themselves trauma and mental damage by bottling up these just truth. Like, it's like, this is beyond just feelings. Like, this is truth. Yeah. Like, by bringing more truth into the world.
But it's not something that it's done by choice. Like, people don't, you know, bottle up when it comes, I don't know, maybe specifically to homosexuality. I think it's because, or actually anything sexuality, society as a whole, like, makes you, if you want to appear normal or a part of society, you have to be in the closet when it comes to being open sexually, or like I talked about in my previous podcast, being a slut, you know. The cost is pretty grand, or it's a huge cost for a female who's open sexually. It's very rare to find, you know, a slut who's proud of it, you know. And I think it's society that it's the reason why they're closeted. It's not by choice that they're like uncomfortable with it.
Yes, I think that you know, the culture, especially in like societies which are like you know, in the States, in England, in Israel too, I think that the culture just has to be introspective about the fact that like some things are just reality, right? And I think that the closer as a society we come to dealing with reality, the better. Right. And the more that people are kind of deluded to a reality, such as the fact that, you know, that being gay is totally normal, then yes, the people, let's take the slut example. I mean, the sooner that girls who are ashamed of being a slut own it and are proud of it, okay, it's like not really even fair that they almost have to be something of like a martyr, because like now they have to like deal with this kind of onslaught of criticism, but it's like, you know what, I don't care. Like, I don't, this is my truth. Like, this is who I am. And if you can't deal with it, that's your issue.
That's why I love these women. I fucking admire women like that, because, like you said, it's like a martyr. It's like these women have balls, like, you know, to own their sexuality, and I don't care what society thinks, even though they pay a price for it, slut shaming or whatnot.
Yeah, but if there is some way, and I'm not going to pretend like this is an easy thing to do, that they can kind of take that shaming and kind of take it as a compliment, right? And be like, I see being a slut as a good thing.
That's where I come in. That's my message.
You know, you're calling me a slut. It's like, thank you.
Exactly.
That's so kind of you.
See, if we'll get to a point in society where it'd be like that, like calling a slut, it'd be like calling a stud. You know, like, you're such a slut. Well, thank you. I'd be like, I've done my mission.
Yeah. Look, I think
I can close shop. Mission accomplished.
I think that when it comes to the concept of truth, you've got this ongoing issue about my truth versus the truth. And when you're dealing with reality, and you've got this situation where two people's truths can kind of conflict, because it's like, that's kind of relativist and subjective in its nature.
But do you think it has to do with truth?
Yes, I do. I think that the role of society, I think the role of culture.
So wait, let me play the devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay.
If my truth is being a slut is the worst thing ever, you suffer, I can pull up articles, and there are therapists who would say that to back up my negative thinking of that. And that's my truth. And unfortunately in society, the majority, that's their truth. So why do you think it's about truth? Because truth is a perspective, don't you think?
I don't, and we can get into what I mean by that, because I think that there is such.
Explain, please.
I shall elaborate on objective truth, but I want to say that, like, I think that society is essentially a question of what we tolerate, like what we include and what we exclude, and what it means to be part of society, and what it means to essentially surrender your rights to be part of a society, be it temporarily because you commit a violent crime, or be it for whatever reason. I think that a really good example of this is religion. I think that religious tolerance is obviously really an important thing. But that being said, you've got a situation where some of the fundamental claims of religion are, quite clearly, at least as far as I'm concerned, not true.
The root of all evil from Planet Joe's preview.
But that's my point, is that, so if I'm a religious Jew, be it even a fundamentalist Jew, but I'm like, I'm not harming anyone, and it's my truth. So who are you to not be tolerant of my truth?
I have a great answer for that. Okay. So think, like, if you want to be a member of a club that's, I'll be generous, 50% of the members in the club believe that if you're different, you should be killed, you should be stoned, you shouldn't drive on Sabbath, you shouldn't eat pork, you shouldn't drink. That's their truth. Fine, you're not like that, but 50%, it's much more, but I'm just being generous. 50% of these club members that you're a part of, that's their belief, that's their ideology. That's where I come in when I'm saying, okay, fine, some of them, not all of them are bad, and I don't think I ever said that. But being a member of such a club is shameful for anyone. Even if you're open, you're saying, yeah, I'm a Jew, but you belong to a club that is a misogynistic, the list goes on. Yeah, so I think my response to that is twofold. The first point is about that kind of wide brush, where, like, you're proud to be American, let's say. It doesn't mean you're proud of every aspect of that identity. Okay. And just because there are parts of American society or things that the American government might have done, I don't think that would mean... Touche. Yeah. The second point is that I actually agree with you, and my example is more focused on people that have beliefs and do not harm other people. I 100% agree that the moment that a religious belief gets to a point where someone
flies a plane into the Twin Towers, or stones a woman for adultery, or
Okay, so
hangs
forgive me for cutting you off, but do you think that it's wrong, like it has to do only with violence? That's when you're harming people?
Can we define violence?
Like you just said, driving, like flying a plane into a building or whatnot, or killing or harming people physically. But in my book, and I'm saying this like, I don't know if you know, but my son's mother, she's not religious per se, but she believes. But my son is in a what's the word? Not religious school. Is it conservative?
Well,
traditional,
let's say,
in a traditional Jewish school, where the kids, most of them wear yarmulkes, but they don't have to. They're not forced. Or tzitzit. How do you say tzitzit? I don't even know.
I don't know. Let's say tit prayer coat.
It's something the Jews wear with those like funny little ropes dangling outside of their shirts.
Very fashionable.
Yeah. But in my book, they're harming the children. When I hear what my child is learning, it's not violence. When people say they're not hurting anyone, but they're teaching them that, God made you, and God brought food to you, and God this and God that did that. And to me, it's like taking away from the actual humans who worked so hard to bring you the food that they teach him to pray for. Or the other day he told me like they taught him like the prayer for rain. To me, that's fucking harm. That's child abuse. Like when you teach a child how to fucking pray for rain, like it's fucking 2019. You pray for rain. So my point is that it doesn't have to be violence. It doesn't have to be like physical violence or killing or murder. But I think Christopher Hitchens said that many times, that religion is child abuse, especially with hell and the threat of hell and all that, that fear mongering. And so, yeah. So even when you see people in the religious circle that they say they're good people, they go to work, they don't harm, they're wonderful, they still do harm. And that's one point when it comes to education. The other point is, I'll give you another example. If, let's say, a traditional Jewish family, or pick any club, Muslim, Christian, whatever. If their son or daughter dates someone outside their religion, it's chaos. It's a dark day for them. That's, to me, it's harmful.
Okay, so I've got to admit that this is a massive crossroads for me. Because my thoughts on the matter, like there are so many roads I could go down right now. I'll start with this. The reason why I kind of responded by asking to define violence is just because I know nowadays there's kind of this redefinition of violence, of it not necessarily being physical violence. Right. But if we can stay with violence just meaning physical violence and not going to kind of what you were talking about, which is the kind of more, let's say, harmful, like kind of traumatic form of like violence in inverted commas. I think that like the strange thing about being alive, and I think that the biggest difference between me versus 10 years ago is I'm more comfortable with the idea that people delude themselves to be happy. I think.
What do you mean?
So there's this kind of there's this somewhat famous Churchill quote, which is that if you are not a liberal at 20, you don't have a heart. And if you are not a conservative at 30, you don't have a brain. And I don't 100% agree with the quote, but I see where it's going.
Right.
The point I wanted to make was that, like, I think that as you get older, you are kind of really, really appreciate this idea that people should just leave you alone and let you live your lives.
Right.
And I think that what happened is that, like, whereas, there are some religious ideas revolved around God, revolved around hell, which you could say are kind of potentially damaging to children.
Absolutely.
I think that there are also some ideas of, let's say, an atheistic worldview, like to do with nihilism and meaninglessness, where, like, if you don't have that kind of somewhat deluded reality towards life.
You just made a sharp left that you ran into a do not enter alley. Why? And it's not only you; it's very common. Why do you think atheists have like meaningless? And don't take me for an example because I'm a nihilist, but I'm not. I talked about it. I became a nihilist since I lost my sister, but many years before that, I was an atheist. And I think I mentioned it. Actually, my appreciation for life went up tenfold once I dropped the belief of, a big daddy in the sky that I have to follow certain rules or whatever. So that's why I stopped you there, and because it's not you're not the first person to say that. If you're an atheist, it's like life is meaningless.
So my sharp left turn was because you took religion as an example and teaching religious ideals, and you kind of spoke about hell,
right?
Which is kind of like not necessarily a central premise of religious teaching. I think that's kind of like a controversial thing to say, but like I wouldn't say that most religious households, like especially not like traditional religious households, like for example, I imagine the school that your son is going to, I don't think that they're like kind of like scaring them about hell every day and like saying that if you don't do this.
But I'm sure they hear like if you marry a goy, maybe not in fourth grade, but stuff like they use fear. I can't think of anything now, but you know what I mean. Not hell. Hell is huge in Christianity, and I think in any other religion it's as strong as it is in Christianity. But there are different aspects where they use fear against children. Like, I don't know, if you don't pray, I don't know, you'll anger God or you want to appease God.
Yeah.
You get my point.
I guess I totally get your point, and I'm not religious at all. I'm always kind of hesitant to say I'm an atheist because I'd say I'm agnostic, but if you were to push me, I would say I'm an atheist.
Right.
But I'd kind of, that's not the end of that thought because I'd need to kind of elaborate on what I mean by that.
Yeah.
But I do think that the situation regarding religious upbringing is that I kind of see religious homes nowadays. And when I was in my 20s, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why would you fill these children's heads with lies?
Right.
And I think that what's happened in the past 10 years is I've kind of, I think I see life more like as a tragic reality. I see life as kind of...
Now you're in my lane.
Yeah. As in, I understand nihilism. And I think that I get where religion comes from. It's like you're on this world for this kind of, you're this piece of carbon.
Wonderland.
Yeah, and it's like, you know what? You want to have your deluded beliefs.
Right.
Chances are you don't have religious beliefs. You have some other strange deluded beliefs. And there's nothing, it reminds me of the story of Sisyphus. Like people know it's like Sisyphic or Sisyphean. I'll share for the listeners that may not have heard of Sisyphus, which is it's a Greek myth about a guy who gets punished, and I believe by Zeus, and his punishment is that he needs to roll this stone up a hill. And he rolls it, and it just like, it's like the most monumental, difficult thing. And at the very end of the day, he's just about to get to the top. He's just about to get to the very top. And it rolls all the way down. And what the catch to the story is the next day he does it again. And there's two ways to see this story. The one way is look at these humans who are just, they create these meanings out of nothing. They believe these sports teams, these religions.
Yes.
They create all their meanings out of these seemingly insignificant things. But they just, the next day, they wake up and they do it again.
Right.
And the other way is to say, look at these humans that you just can't knock the hope out of them. They roll this hill, they roll this bloody stone, they suffer, the course of the day, they wake up the next day, they do it again. You just can't, they have this kind of belief underneath the surface where like, there's just something about them that tells them to keep going, just to keep fighting. Like,
Yeah, but I don't know if it's belief. I think it's just being stuck in the rat maze. I don't think most people, I think majority of humans on planet Earth, they don't think about it like it's something that I believe in. They're just caught up in it. I got to pay bills. I got to feed my children. I got to get to work. And for entertainment, if it's going out or like you said, sports teams, and these are exactly my thoughts as a nihilist. Like they just keep themselves occupied, but they don't even realize it. They're just in the rat maze.
I'm sorry, I just cut you off, but
Yeah.
let's say that is the reality. Let's say that is life. Life is rolling that stone up the hill to
Right.
the end of the day, and then the next day you do it again.
Right.
Which reality do you prefer? The one where you create meaning out of this kind of futile task, or the one where you're so kind of objective about how this rat maze that you like kind of want to leave it? I mean,
So you just reminded me, actually, a couple of days ago, I saw a philosophical analysis of the movie The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot who did that. Great. It was like a 30 minutes thing where they compared it like we live in the Matrix and we're busy and occupied with, the beauty of things, but life reality once you're outside of the Matrix, like Neo, the character of what's his name? Forgot.
Neo from Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
But the character is Cypher, and they went into like depth, like the philosophy of it, like the names of the character, like where they brought it up from Greek mythology and all that stuff. It was fascinating. But Cypher, if you remember much of the movie?
Well, I know that Neo is an anagram of one, which blew my mind.
Exactly, yeah. And Cypher is actually zero. They went back like in history from Latin or whatever, so it's 0 and 1.
And it's called Zion, right? Like the place, the reality is Zion. Yeah.
And the name of their ship has to do with something from biblical. It was just fascinating. Many things I did not know about the movie. I was like fucking amazed. But they talked about Cypher. If you remember Cypher, that's the one who killed him. Or try to kill Neo.
Yeah, in the first movie, right?
That he sided with the agents. Yeah, in the first one. Talking about the first one.
Yeah.
That he gave them up and told them where they're at, the agents or whatever. So they showed a scene where he's holding that steak and he's looking at that steak and he's like, fuck, I know it's fake, but I love it. I choose this fake steak over that miserable reality.
Yeah, that blue pill. He wants that blue pill back.
Yeah. And I was like, shit, that's so fucking meaningful. It's like exactly what's happening on planet Earth. And it's going back to what you said. Like, it's like sometimes I think, I wish I was like in the rat maze where I was like, that's.
So I have to add something, a little bit of extra taste of nihilism here.
Yeah.
Which is that, have you heard about why it is that humans have to have a simulation? Why like don't the machines just live? I mean, why don't they have these humans kind of
You're talking about the movie?
In the movie.
Oh, okay.
The comatose, like they get the energy from the humans.
Right.
Like why not just have them in a coma and just get energy out of them? And the reason
aren't they in a coma though?
They are. But why not just
gotcha.
have them?
Yeah.
Why do they need this whole
to simulate
artificial matrix?
Yeah.
What's the point?
That's a good question. I never thought about that.
And the reason is because they found that when they have this simulated reality, they get more energy out of them. When they imagine that they're part of something which is not real,
they're on fire
and their brain activity is firing.
Nice.
It's like there's another movie. I'm very happy to come back to The Matrix, but I have to reference this other movie called The Island. Have you heard of it?
Fuck yeah, I've seen it a few times.
So the whole concept there was that this insurance company originally just had these organs cloned in a vat, and then shall I keep going? Do you want to build on this?
No, go ahead.
So what they found, this insurance company, was that the organs were not functional. So what did they have to do? Was that like without the customers knowing, they actually cloned the whole human sold them this lie about the island and that's the way that they got their organs working. And the craziest thing about the movie, and it's so smart, is that the way that somebody would like get their replacement heart or liver or whatever like vital organ that would like kill the clone, is that they told the clone, who has this lie, this narrative that they are that they won the raffle,
the lottery thing,
they're going to the island, and then they literally get murdered. And it's such a clever, it is. It's such a clever play on the way that maybe that humans look at religion, but it's like there's something about this simulation that that we might be living in a dream. We might just be deluding ourselves. Everything might be a lie, but either you're unaware of it, or even if you are aware of it, you're just kind of at peace with it. I mean, I know guys who are not religious that live a religious lifestyle because they see the value in it,
right?
And the community.
Yeah.
It's something that really secular people haven't really figured out yet. Having a church.
Yeah.
A secular church.
I think they tried it. There is a small group in the States. I forgot even the name of the movement, where they meet up every Sunday and they talk about atheism or whatnot. But I don't think that didn't gain much traction.
Because there's no delusion. And I think that the only time that it will come, and this needs a lot more thought, is the moment that somebody looks at a nihilistic, meaningless life and somehow finds meaning in that.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I haven't really matured my thoughts on this, but it's like, let's say you come to the conclusion that life is meaningless. It's like, what now? It's like, well, okay, well, maybe if I only have however many years, let's say max 100 years, but potentially more for us, but on this world, it's like, I know that my life is temporal. I know that my life is temporary. And by the way, apparently the word secular means temporary. I saw the etymology of that. Yeah. That secular means temporary.
Never heard that one.
Could be wrong. Fact check, but it could be wrong. I think that the situation is something along the lines of, I find meaning in the meaninglessness. It's like kind of like I see the rat maze, and I kind of own it now because I'm aware of it, and I'm aware that kind of in some sense I can create my own values. I
just brought up the word secular.
Okay, so let's see the etymology. If you go click on the arrow just beneath there. Oh, I can't see.
What is it? Yeah, I can see it. Let me put my glasses on. Of or as denoting slow changes in the motion of the sun or planets? No.
So
astronomy I'm reading. Duh.
So if you see the origin, you see the Latin origin. I can't see what the definition says. Maybe if you look on your laptop, you'll see.
Yeah, hold on. Where am I looking?
You see the origin.
Generation.
Oh, age.
Secularis.
Okay, but I don't want to dwell on the secular point for too long. It's just kind of like, it's this recognition that we're only here for a short period, and that death is essentially death, and it's kind of, what are we going to do about that? And
it's relating to an age or a period.
Okay, so so that life is periodical,
right?
That like there's an end to it.
Yeah. It's finite, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nuance there is that we kind of have this new idea of reproduction, which is that, like, firstly, this afterlife, your children are effectively like your afterlife in some weird sense, so that you do actually survive your death from that point of view. But the modern way, especially with a connected world, is that your ideas can survive your death. So if you reproduce ideas, and if somebody is still thinking the way you're thinking, if your kind of campaign of making people more open to the idea of sexuality, in 200 years, people are still kind of are open to it. You've kind of reproduced yourself.
Right.
And you've kind of outlasted your death because your kind of impact on our, like kind of this collective psyche is,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say it's just kind of like, I think that the issue of death is so central to this whole discussion, and it's kind of the way that people deal with death and the concept of an afterlife, and it's kind of like who is living this more meaningful life, right?
Right.
Is it the one who's kind of doing good things because they're pleasing someone, and they do good things because they are kind of getting brownie points for what happens after they die?
No, actually, I talked about it, and I think it was the second pod about what makes you happy. That in psychology, in our DNA, actually helping others, it actually makes you happy. It's not for brownie points. It does contribute to happiness. And this is what when I was about to cut you off, which I apologize, but that's what I wanted to bring up. When before I lost Gail, before I lost my sister, I was an atheist, but I was far from a nihilist. I really, even though I knew life is finite and temporary, I enjoyed life. I enjoyed helping others. So I was on the other side of the spectrum before I lost Gail. And that actually, and I mentioned it, that's one of the biggest surprises for me when I became an atheist. It didn't happen in one day. And I always say this, the last nail on my God's coffin was 9/11. That was it for me. But the biggest surprise was not only I appreciate life more, but my respect for other humans just went up tenfold.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, do you want to finish the thought?
Yeah, no. So life wasn't meaningless. It was much more meaningful than it was when I was a believer, because when I was a believer, subconsciously, like, believers don't think about it like life is a waiting station for the afterlife. They don't think about it consciously, but that's how they behave. They don't care, their close ones die. Maybe it's wrong to say they don't care, but they don't take it as hard as an atheist does. That's fine. I'll see my daughter in the afterlife. I'll see my father, my sister, my brother, whatever. We'll meet again. They're watching over us up in the clouds, and they're so not only it creates comfort, but that's when I realize it actually makes this life a waiting station. It's okay if I fail. It's okay if I get sick. It's okay. It takes away from the meaning of life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think in terms of accountability, to some extent, it's like, if I'm doing something because I'm doing it because I know it's best for me. I'm not doing it because in the back of my mind or subconsciously or whatever, that, I'm kind of appeasing some superior force. Like, I'm doing it that, like, maybe there is something more kind of direct and meaningful about that. I guess the question I have, which I haven't figured out yet, is, can nihilism be redefined? Is there some way that meaninglessness can be a good thing?
Not according to Nietzsche.
So I do love a bit of Nietzsche, and I'm very happy to dig into that deeper. But I just want to kind of like, I think that that it's kind of like the same way that this nuance that we can kind of redefine what slut means, or redefine whatever these kind of negative terms that people get termed with. Okay. I mean, the N word comes to mind, but these kind of like negative terms, it's like, can we find a way that, like, okay, religious people accuse atheists of being nihilistic. Why is that a bad thing? Maybe there's something about nihilism, which is not this kind of like almost Soviet idea that you kind of you kind of lose meaning in life.
But that's wrong. I'm sorry that I'm cutting you off.
Sure.
That's wrong to say, because I don't think religious people accuse atheists of being nihilistic, even though I am now. And again, it's not because of atheism. It's because of, losing the most important thing of my life, my sister. But I don't think I don't think I felt that religious people accused me ever of being nihilistic, but the accusation was, so life is meaningless. But nihilistic is much darker than just meaningless. It's no purpose. Let me bring it up. I forgot. I remember I brought up the
definition
for the previous episode when I was talking about nihilistic.
I as a keen listener. So it's the moral and religious.
Here it is: the rejection of all religions and moral principles, in the belief that life is meaningless. Extreme skepticism, maintaining that nothing in the world has real existence. That's nihilism. So, I never thought that, nothing in the world has real existence. I didn't think life is meaningless the whole time I was an atheist. I had my loved ones close to me, specifically my sister. I had a great career, law enforcement. I was an atheist, but I enjoyed life and I enjoyed helping people because I knew that's the only life they had. I knew that actually my impact on helping someone is much greater than if I was a believer. Oh, whatever, if they die or they get killed by a drunk driver or whatever in the next life, they'll be fine or they'll be smiling at their parents after they're dead. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I guess the subtlety that I'm trying to get to is that, let's say that we go along with that definition. Maybe there's the hidden power in realizing that things are not real, in that everything is just based on these belief systems.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where you can find that.
Where you find
any power in meaningless, because right now that's what I'm struggling.
Because it can make the world your playground. Do you understand? If you can kind of create meaning out of meaninglessness.
No, but that's the scary thing about meaninglessness is that no playground in the world will entertain me. That's nihilism. That's what I'm experiencing since I lost my sister. Nothing in life will entertain me. Even if I create there is no best. Actually, I take it back. There is a playground. The only thing that's my religion and that keeps me alive and keeps my love for life, and that's pussy, vaginas, women.
Okay.
That's yeah. So maybe you're right. Maybe that's the playground that.
The question. I don't know. The question.
I love it that we're talking about it.
I think, so let's go with that.
Keep talking. I'm gonna get us some ice.
So that's I guess the question that I'd want to ask every nihilist, because I think that there is an answer to this question, is what do you hold sacred? And sacred often has...
There is no sacred for nihilists. That's what I'm saying.
So because sacred has this...
I don't know if you guys heard me, but I'm saying there is no sacred for a nihilist.
Okay, so sacred has this religious connotation, and justifiably so, because sacred is definitely a religious term. But this is where I think that kind of, with the modern zeitgeist, we can kind of redefine these terms. And I think that when you ask people, what do you find sacred, you can really get to the bottom of what is meaningful to them. And that is, and the irony or the subtlety of that meaningfulness is it's not necessarily based on some structure of meaning. It's kind of like what they value in their own lives. What I do know is that on the flip side, and you did make reference to this in your pod, where you kind of share the tragic circumstances with your mum and your sister, was that religious people most certainly do find comfort in these religious ideas.
Absolutely.
And so maybe it's not right to say that religious people accuse atheists of being nihilists, but if you were going to ask a religious person for a prescription of religion, and maybe they wouldn't be the best judges of that, they would say that that's exactly what it provides. So maybe accuse is not the right word, but you can justify, for example, your son going to a religious school or traditional school because there is something about that lifestyle which a secular reality doesn't provide. And if it is true, and you may well be right, that like it's a losing game to kind of try and find some meaning in a nihilistic world, then maybe that religious alternative is not the wrong alternative. I mean, there is a quote of Newton called standing on the shoulders of giants, or at least he popularized the term. It might be older than Newton. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how his predecessors basically gave him the structure to develop his theory of gravity. And, you know, it's really humble thing for him to say. It's totally right. And we are definitely standing on the shoulders of giants in terms of where we are in science and all the other kinds of things.
Right.
And sometimes religion gets neglected in that discussion. And I wonder, because it's not the easiest point to make, especially when you got, you know, Middle Ages and lots of death as a result of religion and all that kind of thing, mm-hmm. is that maybe there's something about the structure of religion where this is actually a point that Jordan Peterson makes, that like God is something like the metaphysical giant, that we are standing on the shoulders of a metaphysical giant, that like these Judeo-Christian values, that this kind of idea that people have inherent and endemic value is something which is so closely tied with the idea of God, and that conscience, for example, is so closely tied with the idea that you are not necessarily the origin of your thoughts and a soul and all that kind of stuff, that like maybe there is something to be said for teaching people about religion, but beyond just teaching them, like kind of getting people to engage with the idea that God is not something that should just be dismissed. That's why I have that kind of agnostic thought, because I'm open to the idea that I am privileged to live in a world where people treat each other with value, and the concept of, for me, of progress, be it on the subject of treatment of women, of rape, of murder, of violence in general, the fact that like these things are just definitely statistically have been going down big time, especially no question post World War II. It's like, I mean, are we throwing out the baby with the bathwater where we say that that God has no place in a modern society, or that it's wrong on some level? Like,
depending on which God you're talking about.
Well, exactly. The moment that somebody talks me black and white God like it's Zeus or like it's Thor or something like that, then yeah, I'm not going to kind of accept that kind of black and white idea that there's like a man in the sky. Okay, I see what's coming.
Adam's laughing. You see, I'm searching for on the computer. I'm looking up George Carlin on agnostics.
And the funny thing is, just before you play this clip, is that
it's still not here. So go ahead.
Okay,
I can't remember if it's George Carlin or some other comedian. But.
Well, it's there's also Jim Jeffries with the God of the party, and
no, about agnostics, about how like. You know, you can't be in the middle. It's either you're an atheist or you're a believer.
Yeah, but I really wrestle and struggle with these kind of black and white ideas that like either I believe or I don't believe. If by theistic you're saying that we're talking about, you know, some guy in the sky that like interrupts our lives and is really interested in what we do in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Then I'm nowhere near that kind of belief. But do I think that, for example, this kind
there's someone in control of this planet?
Well, it could be aliens running a simulation, but like
no, but an agnostic, like what it means that there is some force that has control over the lives of people. It's not a specific God per se, but there's someone.
But you would say you worship
some deity or not.
You worship nature, right? You would say that you worship nature on. Like, I'm not saying that you would necessarily tie that in and say nature is God,
Right, but I don't worship nature, but I know without nature I wouldn't be alive. So I have, a lot of respect for nature. The same thing for the sun. We're talking about George Carlin when he talks about the sun. He probably heard that one.
I haven't actually.
No, where he worships the sun. That's the only thing that actually gives us life. Without it, we'd be fucking dead.
I mean, that's fine by me, but that's kind of worshipping energy. I mean, what is energy? Like, it's the point is, I think, is that I think I see myself as a mystery to myself. And
have you heard this one? The religion is bullshit.
So it definitely rings a bell, but not word for word, but like if you play it, I reckon it'll probably ring a bell.
You want to play it? You guys feel like listen? It's like 10 minutes. Should we listen?
Yeah,
we can
you not hear them? They all said, "Yeah, let's do it." You didn't hear that? They were just like, "Yeah, let's."
Yeah,
play
right.
It. Yeah.
See, all right, calm down, people. Sit down, relax, stop yelling.
Gives us a few schlucks of the whiskey.
But in the bullshit department, a businessman can't hold a candle to a clergyman. Because I got to tell you the truth, folks. I got to tell you the truth. When it comes to bullshit, big time, major league bullshit, you have to stand in awe of the all-time champion of false promises and exaggerated claims, religion. No contest. No contest. Religion easily has the greatest bullshit story ever told. Think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time. But he loves you. He loves you and he needs money.
So true.
He always needs money.
God is always
all
broke.
Powerful, all perfect, all knowing, and all wise. Somehow
knows how to monetize.
Just can't handle money. Religion takes in billions of dollars. They pay no taxes, and they always need a little more. Now, you talk about a good bullshit story. Holy shit.
Fucking love Colin.
Yeah, it's genius. Like, unprecedented as far as I know.
I want you to know something. This is sincere. I want you to know, when it comes to believing in God, I really tried. I really, really tried. I tried to believe that there is a God who created each of us in his own image and likeness, loves us very much, and keeps a close eye on things. I really tried to believe that, but I gotta tell you, the longer you live, the more you look around, the more you realize something is fucked up. Something is wrong here. War, disease,
nobody
death,
said God's a good guy.
Hunger, filth, poverty, torture, crime, corruption, and the ice-capades. Something is definitely wrong. This is not good work. If this is the best God can do, I am not impressed. Results like these do not belong on the resume of a supreme being.
Right.
This is the kind of shit you'd expect from an office temp with a bad attitude. And just between you and me, in any decently run universe, this guy would have been out on his all-powerful ass a long time ago. By the way, I say this guy because I firmly believe, looking at these results, that if there is a God, it has to be a man. No woman could or would ever fuck things up like this.
So true.
If there is a God, I think most reasonable people might agree that he's at least incompetent and maybe, just maybe, doesn't give a shit. Doesn't give a shit, which I admire in a person and which would explain a lot of these bad results. So rather than be just another mindless religious robot, mindlessly and aimlessly and blindly believing that all of this is in the hands of some spooky, incompetent father figure who doesn't give a shit, I decided to look around for something else to worship. Something I could really count on. And immediately, I thought of the sun. Happened like that. Overnight, I became a sun worshiper.
Son of God.
Well, not overnight. You can't see the sun at night. First thing the next morning, I became a sun worshiper.
Yeah, he goes into nature and whatever. So that's why it reminded me when you said that. You said you worship nature.
You know, the thing that I find so funny watching this is that, because I just recently watched the Netflix specials of Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr.
Oh, you saw Bill Burr?
Yeah, I watched the
pretty
fifth
good,
time.
wasn't it?
Oh, it's so good. Oh my God, he's so funny. Yeah. Is that like, it's funny how in Carlin's time, being counterculture was making fun of conservative ideas. And nowadays, being counterculture is making fun of these kind of more radical left-wing ideas. And
it's about time. Shit.
Yeah, and it's like, it's crazy how, like, as a culture war, like that back then, the PC and all that, like the censorship and all that was like these kind of this stereotype of this kind of uptight Christian parents who didn't want their children to see sex and all that kind of thing, and like how they didn't, you know, their kids are doing it, you know, buying magazines on the side anyway. And nowadays it's like, yeah, like it's unbelievable how that shift has happened. It's like
the needle went to the other extreme, the other side of the
total
spectrum.
Horseshoe effect.
Yeah.
Like, so horseshoe effect, like just to clarify, is almost how, like, in the last elections. Yeah, but it's more than just a U-turn. It's how, like, for example, in the last elections, people who are supporters of Bernie Sanders were also supporters of Trump. Because even though they're on opposite sides of the spectrum, it's
Very
just
true.
that kind of populist counter, this kind of mainstream narrative where it's like, let's send someone in there that's going to just fucking fuck shit up. Okay.
Right. And both sides, I think they're kind of like representing people who are sick and tired of the bullshit from the government. But to different extremes, but yeah.
Yeah. Like,
but yeah, let's fuck shit up.
populists.
Let's set the shit on fire and see what happens.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, Louis C.K., who it's almost like, it's like, oh my God, he said Louis C.K. Like, has
Fucking
this show.
love Louis C.K. I don't care what you listeners think. He's
oh my God. So
genius.
I see Louis C.K. as a modern George Carlin.
Yeah.
He has this show.
And
called,
didn't, sorry that I'm cutting you off, but
okay.
who talked about, was it Chappelle or Bill Burr?
Chappelle.
So fucking what? So he fucking jerked off in front of a chick. He didn't make him stay there. That was my thought when they first started talking about it. I'm like, so fucking what? He pulled out his dick in front of a chick.
So it's just like, yeah, exactly. As in, watch any of his shows. It's like, yeah, totally. That's what of course he did that.
Yeah.
Like, he's like a self-confessed pervert.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I'm so shocked that he did, like, what? Like, I'd be surprised if he didn't do that. Like,
and who was it? Fuck, I forgot his name. And I love him. Born Identity. Yeah, it's the booze.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, yeah. When he said that, you know, he was pissed off about the Me Too movement, that he said, how can you compare like Louis C.K. to
Harvey Weinstein.
Weinstein.
Yeah, there's the gradations. I mean, come on, he's not the same monster.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
come on. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's just this idea that people don't have the opportunity for redemption is just like the death of society.
Yeah.
This idea that people go on.
I think that what the left is doing when it comes to that and the Me Too movement, the whole bullshit that, you know, finally only Chappelle and Bill Burr so far are standing up and talking about it. I think it's that PC went rogue. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah?
I think it's, you know, the whole prison justice system is built upon this idea that you do something wrong, you do your time, and you redeem yourself. But for some reason, in the court of public opinion, like trial by public opinion, there is no redemption story. How is this guy still being frozen out?
Yeah.
He didn't do a crime.
Yeah.
And
it's ridiculous.
Like, I'm so frustrated by this idea that, like, that there's like no second chance, and like everything, anyone who's lived half a second of life knows that people make mistakes.
Yeah, pisses me off. Another one is, I think I'm Buzz. I'm forgetting like huge actors' names. What's his name that he said that he wanted to beat up a black guy?
Right.
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson. Yeah. About
that's another good example. Like, and they crucified him for that. It's like that was when he was a fucking kid. Like, what's wrong with you people?
And the crazy thing is, what is this incentivizing? Lying. It's incentivizing not being honest.
Exactly.
And it's the same people that preach truth are crucifying people that tell the truth.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's just like, what kind of, you want a situation, like, is the default mode here that like everybody's perfect? And it's like, I mean, just imagine what it's like. It's going to be like going into politics in 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, all of our stuff, all our data's online. Well, they're going to pull up something like they did with Kevin Hart for the Oscars.
Exactly.
Like,
but do you think it's going to stay like that? I think it's starting to shift, and I think it's going to fucking backfire in, I don't know, maybe 5 years. Like, people are going to say whatever the fuck they want and not give a shit. And I think the pioneers are Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr.
And
I think more and more,
please sun, or something like that. Please nature.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to contradict myself there. Like, I really, for the sake of our sanity and for the sake of freedom, hope that Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr win that war. Because if they lose that war, this is not a world.
But here's the thing. I think that the majority of people think what they think. They're the only public figures that had the balls to actually speak what the majority of people think.
It's the silent majority, right?
Yeah, like, absolutely.
It's this idea that the people that scream loudest are the ones that get the attention.
Right.
And I think that social media has just made that worse.
Yes.
So you've got like this tiny group of people,
right,
like sucking up all the oxygen in the room.
Exactly. Rogan talked about it a few times about Twitter, right? Like, if you have like 15 million comments, they're all great, but 200 shitty comments, that what counts. That what makes it a bad day.
But I guess, the thing is that maybe that is going to be our reality for our lifetimes, that because we're such a connected world, that these small groups of people, I mean, it's empowering and it's depressing that like a small group of people can really control the narrative.
Yeah.
And it's totally ridiculous that like you've got like just like I don't even know who these people are, like these anonymous people.
Which brings me to I brought this up before in this podcast that I'm designing t-shirts or whatever, saying one of the t-shirts, it's a shitty design, but the saying, maybe I got to redesign it, where it says, if you get offended easily you're part of the problem.
Yeah. And
another thing, the intro of Planet Joe pod is, if you get offended easily, you get the fuck out.
Yeah, like you got to fasten your brain seatbelt,
right,
and leave this planet.
So I think it's a matter of time, but those are the people that are going to be shamed. That the ones that get offended, they'll realize they'll get shit from the majority. I hope, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's wishful thinking, but that's what I'm thinking it's going to.
So
get to.
There's an absolutely excellent book written by Jonathan Haidt called The Coddling of the American Mind.
Oh, I started reading it like 3 pages, but I heard it's a great book.
And he has these 3 great untruths, and I hope I don't butcher this now, but I'll do my best. The first one is that you don't prepare the road for the child, you prepare the child for the road.
Right.
And there's something about this idea, I think maybe this obsession with self-esteem, which is that like you've got to build character. You've got to build resilience in your life.
Right.
And it kind of reminds me, like, this is just like a random anecdote, but like when you were at work like the other day and like unfortunately fell over in a very funny way and was my dose of slapstick for the day. And I didn't help you up. And the reason why I didn't help you up is because I know that you are a strong cookie who can deal with it.
Right.
And you've got this kind of safe space, comfort zone kind of approach towards life where you just stay away from all the bad things.
Yes.
And then when it hits you, it's going to hit you like a truck.
Exactly.
Because you've not built up your defenses.
Yeah,
and that's what life is. I mean, there's this nice quote, reputation is built in a moment, but character is built in a lifetime.
Nice.
And it's just like, Jesus Christ. I mean, why is it that, I don't have kids yet.
So that's what I'm holding. I'm holding them. I'm waiting for you to finish so I can give you examples of me with my kid.
One untruth at a time. So let's focus on this one. So tell me about Perry.
So the arguments I have with Perry's mom is like, when he's with me, he fell, he got scratched. I took him to the beach. He almost drowned. Like I took him deep into the water and the waves like hit him and I didn't help. I hold him for 2 seconds or whatever. So yeah, obviously, my first instinct was like, why does he tell her everything? Like, he had fun with me, even though he got scratched here and there. But, I feel like I'm turning him into a boy. It's like, not like, oh my God, you fell, you got scratched, everything. I'm like, I'm treating him, that's part of life.
Eventually to a man.
Exactly.
Right?
So these are the arguments I have with her. But after a while, I realized that she's actually like, every time after I drop him off, she interviews the shit out of him. Like a few times he told me that. But that's a whole different
interrogation.
So, interrogation. Like, what'd you do? What happened? How did that take care of you? Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, when she brought it up, that's what I told her. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen if we're going to treat him with, cotton gloves his whole life? And then he's going to go on his own and start working and start dealing with people. And then he's really going to fall. How do you think he's going to deal with that? So yeah, that's a great example. With Perry, I'm always like, if he gets scratched and starts to cry, like my first instinct as a dad is like to hug him and say, oh, everything's cool. I'm like, so what? You're a fucking lion. It's only a scratch. And he stops crying right away. He realized like, yeah, that's not a big fucking deal. And I'm realizing I'm actually restructuring his neurons, how to deal with pain, with, shit happening. It's like, oh yeah, I guess it's not a big deal. So a little bit of blood.
So there's this crazy thing sometimes you see with kids where like they're not crying and then they look down and they see that they're cut and they start crying. Right. It's like only the moment that they realize,
yeah.
And it's just like, so it's that's like by definition, it's in their mind.
Exactly.
And so if you realize that and you kind of take control of the fact that you realize it's just about interpretation.
Yeah. And as a parent, I realized that too, the parent's reaction when he was younger, when he fell, I ran into him and I held him, and that little panic caused him more to cry. Like, oh my God, this is big what just happened to me, right? And now when I'm downplaying it, the reaction is actually making him realize, like, I guess it's not a big deal. Why am I?
Yeah. So two awesome analogies in the book are bones and immune systems. I'll start with immune systems actually, which is maybe the more intuitive one, which is that like if you live in a bubble your whole life, you're going to die from a common cold. Okay. Nice. And like you build up these antibodies and you like your whatever, your white blood cells, like remember diseases. And that's how you get to a point where your immune system gets strong. And like you got to roll around in the mud a bit when you're a kid, because otherwise you're going to literally every time that the wind blows, you're going to catch some kind of cold. And the bones example is another good example. There's this concept, it's called anti-fragile. So there are things which are resilient, and that means that they can deal with really bad situations, or in the human context, really, really negative circumstances. But anti-fragile is a step beyond that. And anti-fragile is saying where the bones actually get stronger by breaking. After they break, they get stronger. If you don't
in martial arts, that's known, yeah.
Right. If you don't go for a walk every day, your bones get weaker. So it's actually by protecting kids and yourself,
you let them break some bones.
You are actually not only not strengthening yourself, you're actually getting weaker. So there's this idea of like anti-fragile, which is like beyond the fact that, let's say, a plastic plate is not as fragile as a china one, because like it's not like you throw a plastic plate, it gets stronger because it hits the floor, right? But bones and immune system definitely are.
Yeah.
And so that's like the first one.
Yeah. In martial arts, I know, like from Bruce Lee movies or whatever, you have like when they hit walls until their knuckles break and they have to rebuild it. And that's how they can freaking break stone with their fists.
I've seen some crazy stuff. People kicking like palm trees with their shins.
And that's only after they broke their bones a few times.
Yeah. No, they're literally, their shins are like, I don't even know what to compare it to. Like bats. Terminator. They are just, they're as strong as it can be.
Yeah. So I brought this up. I don't know. You want to hear this? George Carlin about germs and the immune system.
We got a George Carlin theme too, ladies and gentlemen.
Listen to this, guys. That's also one of my favorites because I like listening to this, and it's so true, and it reminds me of my relationship with Perry when it comes to like getting hurt or getting sick or whatever. So, hold on.
Your liberty and reminding you that they can fuck with you anytime they want, as long as you put up with it. As long as you put up with it.
He doesn't have to say anything.
Which means, of course, anytime they want.
Hey, what?
That's what Americans
just seeing him
now.
speak just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have to say anything.
He's a fucking genius.
The illusion of...
But anyways, this is George Carlin on germs and immune system.
Neurotic population obsessed with security and safety and crime and drugs and cleanliness and hygiene and germs. There's another thing. Germs. Where did this sudden fear of germs come from in this country? Have you noticed this? The media constantly running stories about all the latest infections, salmonella, E. coli, hantavirus, bird flu, and Americans they panic easily, so now everybody's running around scrubbing this and spraying that and overcooking their food and repeatedly washing their hands, trying to avoid all contact with germs. It's ridiculous, and it goes to ridiculous lengths. In prisons, before they give you a lethal injection, they swab your arm with alcohol. It's true. It's true.
Jesus.
Well,
I've not seen this one.
No.
I saw the other one. I haven't seen this one.
Well, they don't want you to get an infection. And you can see their point. Wouldn't want some guy to go to hell and be sick. It would take a lot of the sportsmanship out of the whole execution. Fear of germs. Why, these fucking pussies. You can't even get a decent hamburger anymore. They cook the shit out of everything now because everybody's afraid of food poisoning. Hey, where's your sense of adventure? Take a fucking chance, will you? You know how many people die in this country from food poisoning every year? 9,000. That's all. It's a minor risk. Take a fucking chance, bunch of goddamn pussies. Besides, what do you think you have an immune system for? It's for killing germs. But it needs practice. It needs germs to practice on.
That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, totally.
So listen. If you kill all the germs around you and live a completely sterile life, then when germs do come along, you're not going to be prepared. And never mind ordinary germs. What are you going to do when some super virus comes along that turns your vital organs into liquid shit? I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get sick, you're going to die, and you're going to deserve it because you're fucking weak and you got a fucking weak immune system. God damn it. All right. Let me tell you a true story about immunization, okay? When I was a little boy in New York City in the 1940s, we swam in the Hudson River, and it was filled with raw sewage, okay? We swam in raw sewage, to cool off. And at that time, the big fear was polio. Thousands of kids died from polio every year. But you know something? In my neighborhood, no one ever got polio. No one, ever. You know why? Because we swam in raw sewage. It strengthened our immune systems. The polio never had a prayer. We were tempered in raw shit. So personally, I never take any special precautions against germs. I don't shy away from people who sneeze and cough. I don't wipe off the telephone. I don't cover the toilet seat. And if I drop food on the floor, I pick it up and eat it. I eat it.
5-second rules, baby.
Even if I'm at a sidewalk cafe in Calcutta, the poor section, on New Year's morning during a soccer riot. And you know something? In spite of all that so-called risky behavior, I never get infections. I don't get them. I don't get colds. I don't get flu. I don't get headaches. I don't get upset stomachs. And you know why? Because I got a good, strong immune system, and it gets a lot of practice. My immune system is equipped with the biological equivalent of fully automatic military assault rifles with night vision and laser scopes. And we have recently acquired phosphorus grenades, cluster bombs, and anti-personnel fragmentation mines. So, when my white blood cells are on patrol, reconnoitering my bloodstream, seeking out strangers and other undesirables, if they see any suspicious-looking germs of any kind, they don't fuck around. They whip out the weapons, they wax the motherfucker, and deposit the unlucky fellow directly into my colon. Into my colon. There's no nonsense. There's no Miranda warning. There's none of that 3 strikes and you're out shit. First defense, bam, into the colon you go.
Good stuff.
Like, he's so insightful.
Yeah.
You know, him,
brilliant.
The capital punishment, the lethal injection, like, really reminded me of, was it the road to hell is paved with good intentions?
Yeah.
Like, there's a really, really good analogy also, which is actually relevant to Israel, funnily enough, about peanut allergies. So peanut allergies were like not an epidemic. They were an issue.
Right.
And then what they found was that they stopped peanuts being in primary schools, in nurseries and high schools. And the peanut allergy just went out of control because, like, nobody was being exposed to peanuts. So suddenly, like, people that might have had a predisposition to it, like, they never overcame it.
Believe it or not, when I go to pick up Perry from school, there are actual signs, like, not to go into the school with anything peanut.
Exactly.
Like,
okay, so what do they do in Israel? They found some babies. I don't know exactly how they did it, control group, but like let's like skip over all the details. They use bamba, okay, which is just it's a snack in Israel with peanuts, okay. And what they found were the kids that were fed bamba from an early age who had this like risk of peanut allergy.
They weren't.
They became completely immune to it.
Right. Yeah.
And it's this crazy thing, which is that like if you hide yourself from the reality of the world, you're actually putting yourself in more danger. You've got to see yourself as being able to stand up to the wind and not to be blown over by it.
Right.
I mean, it leads to the second point, and this is actually in Nietzsche, the second great untruth, which is whatever doesn't kill you makes you weaker, right? So the Nietzsche is that doesn't make you stronger.
Yeah, right.
And again, it's this idea that like putting yourself, like taking risks and putting yourself in compromising situations and exposing yourselves to beliefs that you disagree with or that you perceive as dangerous, or this new definition of violence where like you can't listen to someone, or you couldn't read, let's say, Mein Kampf, like Hitler's book, just because you don't want to expose yourself to those ideas. Yeah. And it's just like this whole deep platforming and this whole cancel culture. And it's just like,
makes you weaker.
It makes you weaker.
Absolutely.
You've got to expose yourself to it. And like, I mean, it's very closely, interwoven with the first point, which is that you've got to realize that the world is not a nice place, and that your response to that should be to live in the right way, not to hide from it.
Right.
It's to build yourself up to a point where, despite the tragic, dangerous, and at times unethical, like state of nature, state of the world,
right,
we are able to conquer that, and that's empowering.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And the final untruth, which is probably the most profound one, and it's something which is in the Gulag archipelago, is that the world is split between good people and evil people, whereas the whole concept of Solzhenitsyn, killed his name, but anyway, was that that good and evil, the line between good and evil, is right down the human heart. And the idea that the world is split between good people and evil people, no, everyone has the capacity for good, everyone has the capacity for evil, and everyone has to fight that balance. And the moment that you it's actually tribalism in a weird sense. We're the good guys, you're the evil guys.
Yeah.
That's why we can deplatform you.
Right.
That's why we can cancel you.
Exactly.
And it's like, and then it's that kind of whole subjective thing. Well, what makes you the good guy?
Right.
Under what criteria?
Yeah.
On what on religious terms? On Christian values?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a scary thought that humans are not resilient or anti-fragile enough to deal with reality. And
humans are stupid.
but it's funny.
Not you listeners. If you're listening to podcasts, you're not stupid. But the majority of humans, I think, are monkey form.
You know, I don't know how. Like, I don't know what to conclude about humanity as a whole. I guess the only person I really know in terms of the only mind I know is my own. I do know that it's a situation where if you are essentially concluding that that reality is too much for a person to handle, you're essentially creating your own religion. You're saying that you need to delude away from reality to protect people, to create these safe spaces,
creating
these
a bubble.
bubbles. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, creating a bubble. And
I don't know. The moment that I think that people don't face up to reality, you're just setting people up for failure.
Yeah.
And if that's starting from a young age, it's like what happens when people get out into the real world, which don't give a fuck about you. Like most people, too busy thinking about themselves. I mean, why should they take your needs into account?
This reminds me, I don't know, talking about the stupidity of humans. You know, when they're talking about like specifically in the United States about manipulating the elections and whatnot. Every time they talk about it, it just reminds me like it's only because people are fucking stupid if they can be manipulated so easily from Russians or from a post on Twitter or on Facebook. It's like, if you're a voter, specifically when it comes to elections, I think it's your duty to do your homework and study what the real thing that's happening, what's going on with the people that you want to vote for, and not because of a post that you're manipulated so easily.
Yeah, I think it's kind of closely tied with this idea of a victim mentality, where it's like if you are susceptible and vulnerable to everything that kind of gets fed to you, it's like, are you a victim? Did you lose your agency to decide? Or are you kind of, I mean, I just watched this documentary about Cambridge Analytica, who are very closely tied with the Trump campaign and the Brexit campaign in England. And, you know, they talk about it like psychops, like psychological operations, and they called it weapons grade psychological operation for anyone that's not sure. Like, when the military invades an area, they will often, let's say, for example, they don't want young Muslim boys to join the Taliban, so they will consider the kind of non-militaristic versions of ways to kind of persuade them not to do so, and like that's kind of psychops. And then when they talked about kind of these social media campaigns, they termed the Cambridge Analytica as weapons grade psychops.
Right.
And that goes hand in hand with the idea that people are so susceptible to what they read online and social media that you can effectively change their voting behavior or based on essentially feeding them information.
It's crazy, you know, and I don't know. I read that it's fucking crazy just because a few posts that, you know, makes them make decisions.
Yeah, but you know, they basically what does these firms do? They get them to take personality tests, and then they determine who are they label them persuadables. So then they already know the people that they're targeting because they might be kind of whatever open to having their
mind changed.
Yeah, their mind changed, and it's kind of like, well, maybe they are a victim. I mean, it's strange because I can't myself imagine deciding who I want to vote for based on kind of a social media post or even a campaign of ads that might be over the course of 6 months. Like, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I consciously am not aware that my decisions on the matter are completely cultivated by what I'm.
So that's my point. It's like, what do you believe in? What do you think is right? And do your research on who can push that message forward when it comes to the public stage. I don't know. It seems so simple to me. Like, why do you gather your... I always say this, and I'm sure you heard me say this before, like people that get their news from one source. It's like preaching to the chorus. You know, it's like saying what I already believe in. I always listen to a few. When it comes to news, it's CNN and Fox News. I listen to both, even though my blood boils when I listen to Fox News. But like I said, when it comes to law enforcement, when they support it, I'm with them or against them. But I think it's your duty as a human being on this planet, whatever you believe in, whatever your morals are, like, it's simple. I don't know. I think it's very difficult. No, I was going to say, I take it back. I didn't even say it, but I take it back. I was going to say it's very difficult to manipulate and change one's mind. But I think I don't know, it's a double-edged sword. Because I'm thinking like being a true, unbiased human being is being able to change your mind. And this is going back to atheism, I think any atheist that you will talk to will say, if bring me enough evidence, I'll believe in any God. And my mind can be changed. That's what I love about atheism and science, because your mind changes on daily basis on evidence.
So Carl Sagan, right?
Exactly.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
What can be claimed without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
Right.
I think that it's, and I'm totally in line with the scientific worldview when it comes to evidence. I think that when it comes to politics, the reality, maybe the sad reality of democracy, but the reality is that most people are low information voters. They don't necessarily have the time or spend the time to invest in looking at different sources. And I guess where I don't blame them is that, you know, people are lazy and they seek convenience and they're hedonistic. And when you've got a situation where that's what they're exposed to on social media, you know, maybe it's not their responsibility. I mean, it's not their fault.
Yeah, no. I kind of agree with you. And that brings me to think of, you know, it should be so simple. Like, why not think of, does anything that I believe in or the politician or whatever that I support harms others? Not physically, but the gay marriage thing is a great example. You know, all these supporters that were against it. Why the fuck would you be against it? Why wouldn't you stop for a second and say, does my belief, if I vote for this person, even though I think it's wrong, like it's your right to believe that, you know, gay marriage is wrong, but why actually go out there and vote or fight and harm others from a simple thing such as love?
So let me preface with what.
So you don't have to be educated for that. Do you get my point?
Yes.
Like, just think for a second. Like, I don't want to affect them. I fucking hate what they're doing, but who am I to tell them what to do?
So I'm going to preface with what I'm saying by saying that I'm very pro gay marriage. Someone in my immediate family is gay, who I love very much.
Mine too.
And
can't remember if I brought it up or not. But
you did, yeah. I think that the nuance here.
By the way, it's a good time if you have a link that you can give the listeners. Adam wrote an amazing article about the gay marriage thing.
Okay.
He sent it to me once and I read it. I was like, wow, that's pretty like
so
New York Times style article.
So I'm, you know, during my university days, I thought I'd try out a blog post and I wrote one, and I guess the link will be in the description. I'll send you.
Send me the links. I can put it.
So I think even since then, since gay marriage was legalized in America, my views have even changed a little bit. I'm very pro gay marriage. I do see the other side, and I will tell you now, where I think that they have half a point. And I only say half a point.
Okay, I don't want to cut you off, but remind me, just so I won't forget, gay marriage and sex. Go on.
Okay, gay marriage and sex, sex and gay marriage, gay sex and marriage.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is that I understand that marriage in a modern context is something which I think is being redefined. And
it's unnatural.
Well, right. So, but if we follow your logic about harm, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily recommend marriage, right?
Right.
So then it's like, what is the purpose of marriage? And I think that the historical reason for marriage in the past 100 years, beyond that, it was more property and agriculture and all the good stuff.
Way more than 100.
You read at Sex at Dawn.
Yeah.
But, you buy 4 camels and a goat and you get your wife.
Right.
Or aristocratic reasons, strategic reasons.
Right. Taxes. Blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Well, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Is that we've got a situation. We've got
airplanes.
Yeah, the miracle of flight. So we've got a situation where marriage has predominantly been for bringing up children.
Mm-hmm.
And to such an extent that if you got your girlfriend pregnant at least 50 years ago, the instinct would be, okay, so let's get married.
Right.
And before we get into the whole whether gay couples can adopt, which I think is a slightly different conversation, connected, but slightly different conversation. If you love your partner and you don't want to have kids, I mean, you can call that person your life partner and have a celebration of love and do all the other good stuff without, involving the government. It's kind of like creepy. It's like, oh, I love you. Like, let's get the government involved.
Right.
So it's so we've got a contract here, and people, I think, have made marriage something that it's not. I mean, maybe Hollywood are to blame and Disney fairy tales might be to blame, but there's this kind of marriage got romanticized. And so there's this idea now that you marry for love, and
the roots are religion, by the way, but
sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely, it's two souls intertwining.
Exactly. Till death do us part, blah.
Yeah, exactly. All that, all that cheesy stuff. Yeah. And I think that what happened was that the whole campaign for gay marriage was like, if I love this person, who are you to stop me?
Right.
For that point of view, they're right. But that's saying that marriage is about love. And I'm not sure marriage is about love. I mean, I don't know for myself, so full disclosure, I'm a single guy, about to go to China for a year. I've never been married and I don't have any children. So
the ladies listening in China?
Yes.
Handsome, smart man on your way.
Good thing this is audio, so the visual can't prove you wrong. But I've got the perfect face for radio, right?
Yeah.
I'm all about that podcasting. So yeah, ladies, if you love me for my mind and not for my looks, then
you're a handsome dude. You know that. Adam looks like a running back or a defense player of a football team.
More like the water boy, but anyway. So if you want to convince me and you want to go down the line of that marriage is about love, then I'll be like, gay people should be entitled to get married because they love their husband or their husband to be, and who am I to say no? But I do actually think that the reason why in a modern context you get married is because you want to bring kids into the world, and there's like a more stable family structure towards getting married, and that when you are married to another person, it's like the potential for ruin to an extent that that you just can't walk away from this thing without it being a bloody nightmare. And I know who I'm speaking to right now also. But I think that it's kind of like that's my consideration. So if I follow that line of thinking about again, naturally bring kids into the world, like we can get into the adoption thing in a moment, I get it. I get the traditional marriage point. And again, I'm pro gay marriage because to follow my thought is that when I think about the alternative, because I'm still going along the children angle of a kid being brought up in a foster home
right,
or an orphanage, versus being brought up by two gay parents who give all the love and affection the
Right.
kid needs, and they see the marriage as that structure to raise a kid. I mean, this like, of course, I'm not going to say that it's better that the kid.
Right. You don't need science to know the correct answer for that
Yeah,
one.
I think that at the same time, there's no question that a kid, the best ideal scenario is that he has a mother and a father. But on the basis that that scenario may not be available, then, like, of course, I mean, I would like to hope that a gay couple, and I know that this may not be true, but that a gay couple would also say, like, yes, you know what? Maybe the ideal scenario is a father and a mother. But given that that may not be the case for this child, a father and a mother and a mother are 100 times better than the alternative.
Have you ever seen that video when that adopted child in court where he talked to the judges before the gay marriage thing? Where he gives a speech of, you know, he was like 26, like after college or whatever, and he was talking about how he was raised by two gay parents. Can't remember if it was
Okay.
2 men or 2 women. But it was so moving. Like, he was talking about how he was raised, and both of his parents are freaking amazing, and he made it through college. And have you ever seen that video?
I've seen it, but I've also seen a video of a woman saying that who's pro-traditional marriage, who was brought up by 2 moms and said that she missed having a father in the home.
So I guess you can always find both sides of the.
Like, but that being said, you take the lady who's not happy about the, you know, is it better that she's brought up in the foster home or?
Right, exactly.
I
Still,
mean,
it's better, yeah.
Right. So it's kind of, I think it's kind of like this recognition that we were talking about, that life is not this utopia.
Exactly.
And but by the way, fun fact for utopia is that apparently topos in Greek means place and eu means no. So what is utopia? It's no place.
No place.
So it's like it doesn't exist. It's just like a fantasy. Apparently the you part of it is ambiguous, because apparently there's another potential source of you. But I like that idea that utopia means no place.
No place.
So that you're selling utopia.
It's a
like
dream.
Communism is utopia. It's like, yeah, totally. That's
Nice.
accurate.
It's a good nugget.
Yeah. And I think it's,
But it's beyond having kids. And this is what I said. Remind me. Gay marriage.
Gay marriage and sex. Gay sex and marriage. Yeah.
I think the majority of people that you talk to that oppose gay marriage, the first thought is like, oh, 2 men having sex or 2 women having sex. For them, they look at it only as the sex thing. That's the taboo of it. They don't see beyond that 2 people actually love each other. They want to live together. They want to, you know, be able to. I heard from many gay couples that weren't married that couldn't visit in the hospital because they weren't the significant other.
Yeah.
Tons of situations, like legal situations that.
So religious people are obsessed with anal sex.
Yeah,
And
or
like
sex in
sodomy.
general.
Yeah, but like specifically like
Right.
sodomy. Like that's and I'm sure that there are gay guys out there that don't even like have like anal sex.
Absolutely.
And they just do other, and it's like, so, I mean, you know, before we touched upon religion, I mean, the moment that religion gets to a point where somebody, you know, believes that homosexuality is an abomination and, you know, gay is not natural and that, like, I mean, so they've lost me. Like, then, and like, there is no value towards teaching someone that, and it's very destructive towards someone.
And 99.9% of religious people who oppose gay marriage, it's all about sex.
Yeah, they're obsessed.
They don't
with
see
it.
any. Yeah, they don't see anything other than that. Like,
They're so
it's 2
horny.
people that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
They just love.
They need to get laid.
Yeah. They're so sexually frustrated. They just like,
Right.
They just like secretly turned on by it or something.
Exactly.
So,
So if you're a religious person and you're a listener, I'm telling you, go get laid. It'll be your life. Will be better.
be open-minded. Maybe find a guy, and you know, who knows, you might like it. But like, you know, I think it's honestly a massive shame that you've got a situation where people are talking past each other, because it's like you know, let's say, for example, in this issue, like, religious people are just like obsessed and sickened and disgusted by the idea of gay people having sex.
Yeah.
Gay people are like, what are you even talking about? We love each other.
Right, exactly.
What are you like? I don't even know.
That's my point.
We're
yeah,
not talking on the same wavelength.
Right,
here.
yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't think about you having sex with your wife.
Right, exactly.
Like,
Good example, yeah.
Yeah, like, I think, I mean, it's also why beforehand I asked you to define violence, is if there's anything that I think characterizes most discussions on social media nowadays, it's that issue of people talking past each other.
Yeah.
So, I mean, before we spoke about happiness, and it's like, okay, so one person can define happiness as contentment, and the other person can define happiness as meaningfulness. And then we can have a discussion about happiness, and we're not talking about the same thing. Like,
right.
I can talk to someone about gender, and then one person can be talking about the way that somebody dresses and like just like this external reality. Whereas, and the other person is talking about like an internal reality, and we're not talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like when it really bothers me where, like, for example, when someone says to me that, like, let's take gender, okay, where someone says that gender is a societal construct, I'm like, well, yeah, but like, what's your definition? I mean, if you want to only focus on the parts of gender that are societal construct, I agree with you. Humans don't wear clothes 10,000 years ago. They probably
Thank
weren't.
you very much.
Maybe a fig leaf, okay? But
Yes.
like, yeah, just so you know, guys, that there are no ladies allowed in here. There's like a no clothes rule. I understand.
Yeah.
Like, I got past it because I didn't identify
As a
as a lady
female.
today. But
There's
yeah.
a big sign in my house.
Yeah.
Women, no clothing allowed.
Yeah, just right next to the mezuzah at the front. For those not aware, mezuzah, when you are a...
Good point to explain it.
yeah, when you're Jewish, you need to remind yourself of the Shema, the most famous and important paragraph in Jewish prayer, and it reminds you of all of the good deeds you have to do to thank God for your existence.
And you have it on each and every doorway.
Yes.
They put a mezuzah and you have to kiss it. Now, my mezuzah, I think I mentioned this before. I live in my mom's house. And this mezuzah was up there since, but I wanted to take it off, but my whole family just lynched me and said that, you know, it's your mom's, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, you know what, it doesn't bother. I don't believe in it, so yeah. That's why I still have a mezuzah on that thing. But yeah, it boggles my mind that people kiss that thing every time they walk through a door. Not people, Jewish people.
Yeah,
Every time, I'm kind of like, inside, I laugh when I see people do that. They kiss a piece of wood.
yeah.
When they go through-
love the taste of it or something.
Think about it. How many hands wipe that thing and put it
that
on their
thing.
lips? It's like...
That's why they have such strong immune systems.
right, exactly, yeah.
If you want to know how the Jewish people survived,
Yeah,
all the
there you go.
oppression,
It's the mezuzahs.
It's the mezuzahs. Yeah, we've been
Mezuzahs and bris. How do you say bris in English?
circumcision.
Circumcision. But it's not bris, really. It's, circumcision is the act. But anyways, I don't know. Have you ever heard of the how many babies get infected after the bris? Because the rabbis
with the
pull it
metzitza?
with their lips.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, there's like in Israel, I don't know why they don't keep a record of it, but outside of Israel, they keep a record of how many Jewish babies after their bris have like a serious infection.
So, there's this guy. I heard this thing about that Jewish questioning and argumentative behavior among men and stubbornness is as a result of our violation at 8 days old, that we have this trauma of being circumcised, which is not part of our conscious, recollection, but that like there's something about that kind of just like plants a seed in that moment. It like traumatizes the brain.
Yeah.
that like for the rest of your life you're really inquisitive about
pissed.
everything. Yeah,
Who got my dick off, motherfuckers?
exactly.
Who got my dick off?
If you ever met
Give me names.
a Jew that has a victim mentality,
There you go.
You might.
Now you know.
Now you know. So you can excuse us
Right.
for our 2 Jews, 3 opinions shtick.
We get our dicks cut off by women born.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, especially if part 2 of the Rabbi's BJ is also an element. I mean, come
Right,
on,
yeah.
like, that's like, probably like so that explains all our Nobel prizes. Like, I think it's. I want to dig down the gender rabbit hole.
Hitchens calls, by the way, circumcision. Hitchens calls it mutilation.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is. I don't think that there's any question that it's questionable, and the only reason why we do it is because our ancestors did it, and it's one of those things where tradition is pushed to the max about whether or not that should be something that's maintained. I mean, I think that, you know, when
Islam, they do clitoris mutilation?
so
Part of their-
FGM,
Yeah.
female genital
Yeah.
mutilation, that's not, I don't think that it's,
in the Quran or something.
I don't think it's part of Islam,
Yeah.
but it happens in Islamic countries, but not only. So I think it's actually an African practice. But the issue is that it kind of got associated with Islam because quite a lot of the ladies, like let's say in Somalia, who have like had this mutilation, are Muslim. But I think that and I may be wrong on this, but I think that it actually originated in Africa and wrongly got associated with Islam. And then it kind of, it's not entirely wrong because it kind of got somehow mixed in with it.
I wonder if it's in the Quran or something, like they have to.
I think that there are Christian girls in Somalia who get FGM. So that's why I think it's more of like a tribal practice.
But I think in Pakistan, Afghanistan, all those places also they do that.
Yes. So most of the ladies in the world who unfortunately have been mutilated and abused in this way are Muslim. But like, it's one of those things where it might be correlation and not causation.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's, when I think about tradition.
By the way, guys, I'm on like my 4th glass of vodka, and Adam is like a child on his 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah, sorry.
What's up with that, motherfucker?
I guess, I don't know. I'm too focused on speaking. But I am not, I mean, not on Joe's level, but I am slowly making my
Are
way.
you buzzed at least? You got
I am
some-
buzzed.
Yeah?
I am
Okay,
buzzed.
that's what matters.
I most certainly am buzzed.
That's what matters. I'll let Adam take the mic. I'm getting some more ice. So I'm going up my 5th one, and this child.
Uninterrupted
fill up
now.
his,
I get to give my preach. I can give my monologue. Oh, thank God for that.
Just so you see how it feels when I do it solo. You know what? I'm also going to go pee, so I'm definitely leaving you alone. Just so you see how it feels being by yourself in front of the mic.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Adam podcast. As you may know, my name is the first ever name given by God after my Mrs. Eve. So if you're wondering why I am so profound, it's because I am the first guy ever to get laid. So let me give me my shtick on tradition. So when I think about society, I see it as a tension between what we keep, what we give up, and what we change. And from a political perspective, I think the people that like to keep things are conservatives. The people who want to change things are the Democrats. And the way that we burn off that dead wood is that tension between what we keep and what we change. That's the way that you know what you give up. And it reminds me of this analogy of a fence in the woods. So to make this more black and white, when a Democrat comes across a fence in the woods, he will remove the fence because in principle, borders walls, fences divide us. They are not a good thing. And they will essentially get rid of it out of principle. No questions asked. Excuse me, Joe. You are not part of this podcast right now. Hey, I'm on a roll. Okay, the momentum is going. So when the conservative comes across this fence in the woods, thank you, Joseph. You want some water? No, I'll stick with the whiskey. No, it's good. When the conservative comes across the fence in the woods, what will he do? He will check why the fence is there. He will assume that the fence is present because there must be a threat. There must be a reason why this fence exists, and as a result, he won't remove it. And the nuance here, the middle ground, is of course, you check the reason why the fence exists. You check whether the threat that caused the fence to be put up in the first place is still relevant. And if it's no longer relevant, then you get rid of the fence. And I think that's the society. I think that is what this tension between conservatives, or let's say right wing and left wing, is all about. And, you know, the irony about left wing politics, I think, in a weird sense, is that the left wing often characterize themselves as the party of science. And I think growing up, I was definitely more in line with left-wing way of thinking. But when you think about, let's say, evolution, by evolution I mean Darwinian evolution, natural selection, that is more conservative than it is Democrat. So when a species evolves, Joe's come back and he's seen the tangent I've taken.
Is it okay to chew gum while you're podcasting? I crave gum.
Oh, I chew way too loudly to chew gum right now. So,
but what the hell are you talking about? Do you guys know what he's talking about?
Let me finish the thought.
Guys, if you're bored, dial 1-800 shut the fuck up.
Edit this later anyway and get rid of this whole spiel. Okay?
I went to pee and got us some more booze and
I
like,
talk
what the fuck is he talking about?
Passion of evolution.
But, right, let's listen up.
So when an animal evolves, okay, what happens is that a tiny mutation can change the course of a whole species. But what people forget about that kind of mutant who has this kind of piece of genetic code that will essentially change the course of the history of his or her species is that 99.9% of him is what is the same as it was before. And it's only this tiny 0.1% that has a huge impact. So what that means is that when you're talking about tradition and you're talking about life and society and the way that we live our lives and culture, we essentially keep most of it and we change small things that can have a huge impact.
Right.
And so when people accuse, I don't like the word accuse, when people say that conservatives are small-minded or don't like change or something like that, I think the real question is that if you are conservative, what do you conserve? What is it, values that you're conserving, or is it just, you know, resisting change for the sake of resisting change? The moment that somebody is conservative just because they don't like change, they're out the game. Mm-hmm. They're crazy. They're insane. They need to leave. And the moment that a Democrat likes change just for the sake of change, they're also crazy. And they need to leave the room because they're not reasonable. We need to have this kind of new approach towards change where we realize that not every change is a good thing and not everything traditional is a good thing.
Right.
And we got to find that middle ground, right?
And we can start by legalizing prostitution and embracing sluts. That's a good change.
Go on, give us you brought it up. So what is the main reasons why legalizing prostitution and encouraging sluthood are good ideas?
Yeah, let's start with legalizing prostitution. Think about it.
Okay.
When you have sex with someone, if you don't exchange money, it's fine. If there's money exchange, it's illegal.
If you buy them dinner?
That alone, well, I guess that's like, right. I don't know if you heard this before, but I'm probably going to freaking butcher this sentence or paragraph. But it says it's cheaper to go to a prostitute than to date. Something along those lines.
I mean, not endorsing it necessarily, but I mean, I think that anybody would recognize that as true. It's also less time invested where you could be making money. So
no, there's another one. If I can remember it, women sleep with men so they can stay with them. Men pay women so they can leave. something like that.
Yeah. So
no, but when it comes to that, I mean, sex is so natural to me and to nature. It's just like food and breathing. Mm-hmm. It's just like, making that illegal.
But you don't charge people for breathing. What I mean by that is that maybe money shouldn't go that far. Maybe there's something that devalues sex by putting
so let's say, so maybe air when it comes to charge people, but you charge people for food, right?
Yeah,
that's to eat. But I'm saying even like, I don't know, let's take the air comparison. If someone cannot breathe, they're provided with oxygen, which someone has to pay for it, right? Medical insurance, something.
Okay.
Oxygen costs money if they can't breathe. If you want to go that route, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's a stretch, but I see the point, yeah.
No, so where I'm going at is people that cannot have sex. People not like me and you, disabled, or people have social function problems or mental disorders or whatever. They have a right to have sex too. Mm-hmm. And if you hear from many sex workers, many of their clients are people like that cannot go out and meet people and have sex. And sex is helpful and it's healthy and it's helping them deal with their disease, with their mental problems, with their loneliness, with whatever. It contributes to their lives. There's good in it.
Is sex?
That's one thing.
Is sex? Sorry to cut you. But is sex inherently a private thing?
No. We made it so. But and again, you read Sex at Dawn. Mm-hmm. There's another book that I didn't mention because I didn't read it in a long time, but it's The Red Queen. I don't know if you heard of it.
I've not, but it's a reference to Alice in Wonderland.
Like
the Queen.
Yeah,
part.
right.
Okay.
But to this day, I don't know what the reference is when it comes to sexuality, or I did when I read the book. I don't know. I got to look into it, the book again, and tell you guys about it as well. But anyways, it's also like Sex at Dawn. It's about the history of human sexuality. But yeah, believe it or not, back in the day, even to this day, and I mentioned this, a couple of tribes on Earth that for them sex is like saying hello. So there's a tribe in Africa and one in close to Tibet in China, the Mosu tribe. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable for many people to comprehend that, but it used to be like that. Like, hey, you want to fuck? Let's fuck, and we go on with our day.
But is that better? You're right that maybe it used to be that way. Is it better?
Is it better than what?
Than what we have right now?
Fuck yeah. Absolutely. Because it's like food. It's something that I don't believe in souls, but for those who do, it's food to your soul. To me, it's food to your body. I mean, you cannot deny that it's healthy for you. What it does to your body, to your cells in your body, to your immune system. Like physically, it's healthy for you. If you don't have it, you become ill in certain ways.
But have you ever had that experience where there's something you really love and then you feel kind of uncomfortable involving money in it? Like, for example, let's say you're like really good at guitar and you wouldn't want to charge people to teach them guitar because it's like a passion of yours. And that there's something like kind of that devalues.
But that's not a necessity. Food and air is a necessity. Sex is a necessity. That's how I look at it. It's not a hobby. Of course, as a hobby, I would like to have sex with 5 different women every single day.
Okay, so this is
And if I have to pay for it, it would ruin it for me.
it's a modern problem, which is just coming up now, which is something that actually threatens sex work. Because I actually agree with you that I think sex work should be legalized, as I do most things which are non-violent crimes, which is about sex robots, right?
Right.
Which is that, like, if sex is kind of like just a case of necessity, then it's like, well, you don't need a human.
Not true.
Okay.
Not true. So here's the thing. Sex robots are great to satisfy, I don't know, think of sex robots as if you're starving, you have a can of corn and crackers. That's a sex robot. Having sex with another human being is having a nutritional meal, because science even proved that even hugging another human being is actually healthy for you. There are chemical changes in your body that are good for you. The warmth of touching another human being affects your body physically.
So yeah, I've seen professional huggers. I don't know if you've seen that, like professional cuddling services.
Oh, cuddling, yeah, I've seen that, and many people recommend it to me because I'm a very touchy person, and I guess I can give myself credit for that. I'm a good hugger. So yeah, when it started coming out, I was in the States at the time. People were like, "Oh, you should do that because you're a great hugger."
Yeah. Just don't get handsy, right? Just like that.
That's why I don't want to do that. That's why this profession won't be good for me.
Man with no limits.
Right. But yeah, do you see the difference? I mean,
I see the difference now.
And it's not,
I don't know if in 20 years from now, how uncanny it might be, the difference sentimentally. Like when I honestly don't know how realistic these things can get, because I do know that, like, I can imagine, like, I can kind of picture this sex worker being kind of cold and fed up of her clients, and not necessarily being able to give the experience that you're describing of, like, I don't think that they.
I can say the majority of them probably can't. Which you're right. Not many sex workers can actually relate and connect with their client.
So the thing that I dislike about capitalism, okay, I know it's kind of a bit of a off base, but I think that money goes too far. I think that there are some things that shouldn't be monetized, and my instinct is that ideally sex shouldn't be monetized. But given the circumstances that there's this term incel, which I'll come to in a moment.
I know that term.
Yeah. So incel means involuntary celibate, which is that
crazy guys who can't get laid.
Yeah. So guys that for whatever reason, they are not asexual or something, but they've essentially been rejected every time that they've tried it, or they haven't. Yeah, that's a bit of clinking for you.
Salute.
They haven't basically succeeded with the ladies. And like they've got to a point where they've basically like, okay, either I buy a sex doll or I'm gonna use a prostitute. And I think that I just think that there's something unique about sex, which makes it, and from a commercial perspective, I think it just makes it different from food, for example. Definitely similarities, definitely both connected to pleasure and feeding the soul, okay, soul in inverted commas. And I guess I also think that maybe this is my traditional upbringing speaking, not that it was so traditional, but I see sex as private, actually. I think that there's something about the activity that I'm very open about talking about it, about discussing it, but I do see it as a private matter. And therefore, it's like...
Talk to me after you had an orgy with 4 or 5 women. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, as in, I'm not going to, from a hedonistic perspective, I definitely get... Well, firstly, I totally get how intimidating the idea of monogamy is. And I get how... There are benefits to kind of having this kind of open approach towards sex and not kind of making it about possession and about kind of just like, letting go. But, I guess this is kind of the 28-year-old me versus the 18-year-old me, where the 18-year-old me would be kind of would disagree with what I'm saying right now, which is like far more kind of like, I don't understand the concept of property. I don't understand the concept of me, mine, my.
Yeah.
It's like stop trying to say it's my life. It's just life.
Right.
And like the more that you try to control it, you're just deluding yourself.
Right.
You don't have control over this thing, especially not your sexual urges. So stop like trying to, but now I do believe in my life and about defining things and categorizing things, and marriage too. I believe in the idea that given the circumstances and the unpredictable logistics that we have to kind of build our lives upon, I get it. I just kind of get this kind of legal fiction. And as much as there's kind of something appealing about this kind of polyamorous swinger lifestyle, I think that my trade-off is that, like, well, at least for now, it's like, it's not for me or something like that.
Yeah, which makes sense. But my argument, it's the way we were programmed.
Yes, but we were probably
It's
also programmed to rape. We were probably also programmed to commit violence tribally. I mean, there's nothing unnatural about rape. It's not like it's extremely biological. It's
right.
about spreading the seed and
right. But I think maybe it's a misogynistic point of view, because I was going to say I think it's natural to think that why does rape exist is because the need for it. It's like, why does someone robs a store in order to eat? If it wasn't so necessary, rape would not exist.
But girls, essentially, and by the way, when I think about it, when I think about like the game, let's say, if I look at it from the outside and like the kind of the game of seduction, girls dictate the game. Like when I see sports and I think about why are like guys so competitive with each other, I don't think of it as guys competing with guys. I see there's this like hidden girl where like the guy knows that like there's some hidden girl watching, and they're like kind of fighting with each other, and it's really smart from a girl's point of view, right? It's like, I don't need to weed out who's the strong and who's the weak. Let the guys fight it out,
right?
And the one who comes out on top, I'll choose him.
Exactly.
And I think that there would be
pussy power.
Yeah, right. Like, I am the magnet.
Yeah.
So like, and I think there's this phenomenon where like, if you are completely open and free, it's actually a minority of guys that would get all the pussy. And that most guys would be in this incel, because there's no reason why one guy can't have the heart of many ladies. And I don't think, like, that's why I think that, like, for example, monogamy, it kind of makes it a more level, well, not a more level playing field, actually the opposite of a level playing field, but you almost need to enforce it, because otherwise you got a lot of sexually frustrated guys in society who are incels.
Yeah. But let me rewind for a minute. You said, I don't see why one guy cannot win the heart of many ladies.
Yes. I think that if girls, and if like the polyamory catches on, I think that,
and I have an answer for you, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of intuitive, like self-explanatory what I'm about to say, which is that I think that, if one woman doesn't need one guy, then I think that it's kind of like there can be just like 10% of the guys that are essentially sleeping with 80% of the women, or 20%, or let's say it's Pareto distribution, like 20-80.
Yeah, but okay. So here's what I wanted to say from my experience. Going back to, I don't know, the first time where I felt like I have a choice, I guess, of a few women. I don't know. Let's put it like a mini celeb. It was when I was a DJ. That was the first time I felt like
The magnet.
Like I can just pick one, all right, or two or whatever. And this was the first friction that I had with monogamy, because when I picked the hottest supermodel that thousands of women would dream to go to bed with, and she became my girlfriend, that's it. Everything else is over. It's done. You're done. You can't. Your only option is to cheat. And I don't think I ever mentioned this, but I never, as much as I love sex and swinging, I've never cheated on a woman in my life. And I think that the background for that is because my father was a womanizer, and I was a mama's boy. So I was very close to my mom, and I saw how much he hurt her when it comes to that. So I never, ever in my life cheated on a girlfriend when I was in a relationship. But the downside of it is that I broke up, like, I don't want to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but people used to call me a heartbreaker. Like, I used to get into a relationship, and after a few months I wanted more, and I wanted variety, and I used to break up and break women's hearts.
So in hindsight, do you see any value in having an official status for the girl as opposed to just kind of...
Absolutely.
What's the value in that?
Well, first of all, getting to know a person into such depth, it's something that you won't find in casual sex or, in short relationships.
Just to clarify, when I say official, I mean exclusive is what I mean. Like, where, like, you would... Because you can definitely do that and still kind of mess around. I mean exclusively official, where, like, you wouldn't hook up with other people.
Mess around as cheating, you mean?
No, you can be open.
That's what brought me to polyamory. That's what I was going to say, because that's when the only time where you can be exclusive with someone, you can add more partners to your life. But I don't know if you heard the term. There's a primary and secondary in love when it comes to lovers.
I'm not so familiar, but I can picture this kind of being a utopia.
It's not,
because
nothing is. That's the thing. It's not. Many people think like, oh, you think it's it's not perfect. Actually, I think it's a little harder to have 5 lovers than one. It's harder. Like, the biggest thing is scheduling, like meeting or whatever. She's with him or she's with her. He's with my girlfriend has another boyfriend or whatever. It's harder, but it seems more natural because one person cannot satisfy everything about you or with you. If it's, I like a person who's funny and my partner is not funny, so I have a partner who's funny who satisfies that. And the polyamory, that's the difference between swingers and polyamory. A lot of people confuse the two. Swinging, it's fucking other people when you're married, together or separately, or that's an open relationship. Polyamory is actually having relationships with other people while you're with someone. So it's not only sex.
So I see the swingers one as easier to handle, because you know who you're going to end up with in the end.
Right.
I think that I struggle to see the long-term stability of polyamory because of jealousy. And
jealousy is a thing in polyamory.
Yeah, and I think
it's not non-existent.
And I think that this is the trade-off, right? It's like, is it better to kind of have to mess with that, or to mess with this thing where, like, you're married to someone and you end up resenting each other because you feel like you're kind of resisting each other's urges?
It's the worst thing to me. It's prison.
Yeah,
to me, I fucking hate it. Every time I was in a monogamous relationship, I felt like prison. Like, you can't even tell that person you're like what really is in your mind. And when I was together with a swinger or a polyamorous person, that freedom is priceless, where you can tell them, I feel like new vagina. And she's like, go have fun. She walks into the room and I'm online on dating sites looking for to hook up. And that's my girlfriend that I live with in the same house.
Yeah.
And she looks behind my shoulder and she's like, oh, she's hot. Maybe you should bring her over.
So
that's, to me, the greatest thing in the planet.
It sounds beautiful.
And not to
I do question the long-term sustainability.
So here's the thing. Not to say that we don't have arguments or fights like monogamous people do. The same thing, happens. But you still have that freedom of exploring and living life. And you're not, like, locked up in this, I own you and you own me. Like, the ownership, specifically sexuality, ownership over each other.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a middle ground.
Okay, if you're wondering if there's a middle ground as well, come back next week. This is it, 2.5 hours. I'm going to cut it off, and we still have 2.5 more hours to go. So come back next week for the second half of this episode. And thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, come back next week. We'll start from where we just stopped now. See you next week, my peeps. Don't forget to follow me on all social media, Planet Joe Pod, anywhere and everywhere. All right, we'll see you back here next week. Peace out. Love ya.